Admiral Kim Tae-ho stood in the dark command center, staring at the huge screen that showed space around Earth. Red dots blinked on the display like angry eyes. Each dot was an alien ship. There were so many of them. "Sir, we count 300 enemy ships," said Lieutenant Park Yoon-ji. Her voice was calm, but her hands shook slightly as she worked at her computer. "They're bigger than before. Much bigger." Tae-ho nodded slowly. He had been waiting for this day for 15 years. 15 long years since the Vraxian aliens had first come to human space. They had burned entire planets, killed millions of people. Then, for no reason anyone understood, they had simply left. But Tae-ho knew they would come back. Everyone knew. "How long until they reach Earth?" he asked. 6 days, sir," replied Captain Lee Dong-woo from across the room. "Maybe 7 if they stop to destroy the outer colonies first." The room fell silent. Everyone remembered what happened to the outer colonies last time. Nothing had survived, not even the emergency beacons. Tae-ho walked to the big window that looked out into space. He could see the moon hanging there like a white pearl. But he could also see something else, something that made him smile for the first time in weeks. Ships, hundreds of human ships floating in formation around Earth. But these weren't the small, weak vessels they had 15 years ago. These were something completely different, something the aliens had never seen before. "Commander Yoon Sora," he said into his communicator. "Are the orbital platforms ready?" "Yes, sir," came the reply. "All weapon systems are online. The new quantum cannons are charged and waiting." Tae-ho remembered the First War. He had been just a captain then, commanding a small destroyer. He had watched helplessly as alien weapons cut through human ships like they were made of paper. He had seen entire fleets disappear in minutes. The aliens had technology that seemed like magic. Their shields could stop any human weapon. Their ships moved faster than anything Earth had ever built. When they fired their weapons, human vessels simply ceased to exist. But the aliens had made one mistake. They had left humans alive. "Sir," said Park Yoon-ji, "we're getting reports from the outer sensor stations. The alien fleet is moving in the same formation they used last time. They haven't changed their tactics at all." Tae-ho almost laughed. Of course they hadn't changed. Why would they? Last time their old tactics had worked perfectly. They probably thought humans were still using the same weak technology, still flying the same slow ships, still firing the same useless weapons. They were about to learn how wrong they were. "Send a message to all fleet commanders," Tae-ho ordered. "Tell them to prepare for Operation Phoenix. Tell them it's time to show the galaxy what humanity has become." In the 15 years since the First War, Earth had not been idle. Every scientist, every engineer, every soldier had worked toward one goal. Never again would humanity be helpless. Never again would they watch their worlds burn while enemy ships flew away untouched. They had studied every piece of alien technology they could find. They had rebuilt their entire military from the ground up. They had created weapons that existed only in theory before the war. They had built ships that moved like living things through space. Most importantly, they had learned to think like their enemies, to predict their moves, to turn their own strengths against them. Captain Lee Dong-woo approached Tae-ho's position by the window. "Admiral, the crews are asking questions. They want to know if we're really ready for this." Tae-ho turned to look at him. Lee had also fought in the First War. He had been there when the Soul was destroyed. He had watched 3,000 good people die in less than a minute. "Tell me, Captain," Tae-ho said quietly. "What do you see when you look at those ships out there?" Lee looked through the window, at the human fleet. The ships were massive, gleaming with new armor and bristling with weapons that hadn't existed 15 years ago. They moved in perfect formation, like they were connected by invisible strings. "I see the most powerful fleet humanity has ever built," Lee replied. "Good," said Tae-ho, "because the aliens still see us as we were 15 years ago, weak, scared, helpless. They're coming here expecting to finish what they started. They think they're hunting sheep." He paused, watching as more human ships moved into position around Earth. They have no idea they're about to face wolves. The red dots on the display continued to blink, showing the alien fleet getting closer with each passing hour. But for the first time since the war began, Tejo felt no fear, only anticipation. Humanity had spent 15 years preparing for this moment. They had built weapons the aliens couldn't imagine. They had trained soldiers who could think faster than any computer. They had created a military machine designed for one purpose: total victory. The aliens were coming, expecting to find the same broken species they had left behind. Instead, they would find something that had never existed in the galaxy before, something that would change the balance of power forever. They would find humanity unleashed. Dr. Choi Min-ho walked through the metal corridors of the research station, his footsteps echoing in the silence. Behind him, Colonel Han Ji-won followed, quietly, her eyes wide with amazement at everything she saw. "This is where we changed everything," Min-ho said, stopping in front of a massive window. Beyond the glass, robots worked on something that looked like a spaceship, but unlike any ship Ji-won had ever seen. The vessel was huge, almost as big as a city block. Its surface was smooth and dark like liquid metal that had been frozen in place. Strange lights pulsed along its sides in patterns that hurt to look at directly. "What is it?" Ji-won asked. "That's a Titan-class destroyer," Min-ho replied with pride in his voice. "One of 50 we've built in the last 5 years. Each one can destroy an entire alien fleet by itself." Ji-won had fought in the First War. She remembered how their biggest ships had been torn apart by alien weapons like they were made of cardboard. "How is that possible?" Min-ho pressed a button on the wall, and the window became a screen showing the inside of the ship. Ji-won gasped. The corridors inside glowed with blue light, and everything seemed to move slightly, like the ship was alive. "We learned from them," Min-ho explained. "Every piece of alien technology we found, every weapon fragment, every computer chip, we studied it all. Then we made it better." They walked to another section of the station. Here, workers in white suits were assembling weapons that looked nothing like the guns and missiles from the old war. These weapons seemed to bend light around them, making them hard to look at properly. "Quantum phase cannons," Min-ho said. "They don't fire bullets or energy beams, they fire pieces of space itself. When they hit an alien ship, the ship simply stops existing in that spot." Ji-won picked up one of the smaller weapons. It felt warm in her hands, and she could swear she felt it humming with power. "The aliens won't be expecting this. They're not expecting any of it," Min-ho agreed. "Come, let me show you the best part." They took an elevator down to the bottom level of the station. When the doors opened, Ji-won found herself looking at something impossible. The room was filled with what looked like stars, but they were moving in patterns, swirling around each other in complex dances. "What am I looking at?" she whispered. "The neural network," Min-ho said. "Every human ship is connected to every other ship through quantum entanglement. When one ship learns something, they all learn it instantly. When one ship moves, they all move together perfectly." Ji-won watched the lights dance and realized what this meant. They fight as one mind. Exactly. The aliens have never faced anything like it. They're used to fighting individual ships that make mistakes, that can't coordinate properly. Our ships think and move like a single organism. They walked past more windows showing different parts of the construction process. In one room, workers were installing armor that seemed to repair itself when scratched. In another, technicians were testing engines that made no sound but could move a ship faster than light itself. "How did we do all this so quickly?" Ji-won asked. 15 years isn't very long to change everything." Min-ho stopped walking and turned to face her. His expression was serious, almost sad. "Because we had to. Every person on Earth knew that the aliens would come back. Every scientist, every engineer, every factory worker. We all worked 18 hours a day, every day for 15 years. He gestured toward a memorial wall covered with photos of people who had died during the construction. We lost thousands of people building these weapons. Accidents with the new technology, explosions during testing. Some people worked so hard they just collapsed and never got up again." Ji-won studied the faces on the wall. They all looked determined, even in death. These people had sacrificed everything so that humanity would be ready. Was it worth it? she asked. Minho led her to the final window. Outside, the human fleet was conducting training exercises. Ji-Wan counted at least 200 ships, all moving in perfect formation. They twisted and turned through space like they were dancing, never colliding, never making mistakes. As she watched, the ships suddenly spread out and began firing at practice targets. The weapons made no sound in the vacuum of space, but the targets simply vanished. Not destroyed, not blown apart. They just ceased to exist. "Watch this," Minho said, pressing another button. The ships suddenly changed direction, moving so fast that Ji-Wan could barely follow them with her eyes. They formed new patterns, new formations, all without any visible communication between them. It was like watching a flock of birds, but these birds were made of metal and carried weapons that could destroy planets. "The aliens taught us one lesson 15 years ago," Minho said quietly. "They showed us what happens to species that can't defend themselves. They showed us what weakness costs." He turned away from the window, his face hard with determination. "Now we're going to teach them a lesson. We're going to show them what happens when you attack humanity and leave survivors. We're going to show them what we've become." Outside, the human fleet continued its deadly dance, preparing for a war that would decide the fate of the galaxy. Warlord Thexar sat on his command throne, watching the human solar system grow larger on his screens. His massive ship, the Deathbringer, led a fleet of 30 vessels toward what should be an easy victory. Behind him, his officers prepared weapons that had destroyed countless worlds. "Humans detected ahead," reported his tactical officer. "Just as expected. Small patrol ships probably trying to run away like last time." Thexar laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Excellent. Destroy them quickly. We have a planet to burn." The humans had been pathetic 15 years ago. Their ships moved slowly, their weapons barely scratched Vraxian armor, and their tactics were simple and predictable. This would be just as easy. "Sir," the tactical officer said, confusion in his voice. "The human ships aren't running. They're coming toward us." "Good," Thexar growled. "Save us the trouble of chasing them." On the main screen, 5 human ships approached the Vraxian fleet. They looked different from the vessels Thexar remembered, but he didn't care. Human technology was primitive. Their ships were weak. This would be over in minutes. Captain Kim Soo-jin stood on the bridge of the Soul's Fury, watching the alien fleet through her tactical display. Her ship was one of the new Titan-class destroyers, and she was eager to test it in real combat. "Enemy, ships in range," reported Lieutenant Bae Hyun-woo from his station. "All weapon systems ready." Soo-jin smiled coldly. The aliens had no idea what they were about to face. "Begin attack pattern Alpha. Show them what we've learned." The 5 human ships suddenly exploded into motion. They moved faster than anything Thexar had ever seen, twisting and spinning through space like they were dancing. Within seconds, they had spread out and surrounded his entire fleet. "Impossible!" Thexar roared. "No ship can move that fast." His weapons officer tried to target the human vessels, but they were moving too quickly, changing direction too often. Every time he thought he had a lock, the ships vanished and appeared somewhere else. "Fire everything!" Thexar commanded. "Destroy them all!" The Vraxian ships opened fire with their massive energy cannons. Beams of red destruction lanced out toward the human vessels, but the humans seemed to know exactly where each shot would go. They twisted away from the attacks like they could see the future. Soo-jin watched the alien weapons fire harmlessly past her ship. "Their targeting systems are exactly the same as 15 years ago," she said to her crew. "Our computers predicted every shot." The neural network connecting all human ships shared information instantly. When one ship detected an alien weapon charging, all 5 ships knew about it immediately. When one ship found a weakness in alien armor, all ships targeted that weakness at once. "Return fire," Soo-jin ordered. "Let's see how they handle quantum phase cannons." The human ships fired their new weapons. Instead of energy beams or missiles, they fired pieces of twisted space itself. The attacks passed through the alien shields like they weren't even there. Thexar watched in horror as holes simply appeared in his ship's hulls. Not blast damage or burns, but perfect circles where metal and equipment had simply stopped existing. Atmosphere and crew members were sucked out into space through the holes. "Shields aren't stopping them," his officer screamed. "The weapons are passing right through." "How is that possible?" Thexer demanded. He got his answer when one of the human weapons hit his own ship's armor. A section of the Deathbringer's hull simply vanished, as if it had never existed. Emergency alarms began screaming throughout the vessel. The human ships moved like predators hunting prey. They stayed just out of range of the Vraxian weapons while their own attacks found their targets with perfect accuracy. Every shot counted. Every hit caused massive damage. Lieutenant Bei Hyunwoo monitored the battle from his station. "Enemy fleet is breaking formation," he reported. "They're trying to retreat." Sujin shook her head. "Not today. All ships. Execute encirclement pattern beta." The 5 human vessels moved again, faster than before. They formed a perfect circle around the alien fleet, trapping them completely. Any Vraxian ship that tried to escape found itself facing multiple human vessels at once. Thexer's fleet, which had seemed so powerful just minutes before, was being systematically destroyed. His ships exploded one by one as human weapons tore through them like paper. His experienced crews, veterans of dozens of conquered worlds, died screaming as their vessels came apart around them. "We have to retreat," his tactical officer begged. "We have to warn the main fleet." "There is no retreat," Sujin's voice came through their communication system. "This is for all the humans you killed 15 years ago." The Soul's Fury fired its main cannon directly at the Deathbringer. The quantum phase weapon punched through the massive ship from front to back, creating a tunnel where the ship's center had been. The mighty vessel broke in half and exploded. Thexer died still wondering how the weak, primitive humans had become so deadly. 20 minutes after the battle began, it was over. 30 Vraxian ships had been completely destroyed. The 5 human vessels hadn't taken a single hit. Sujin opened a communication channel to Earth Command. "Admiral Taeho, this is Captain Sujin. The outer perimeter is secure. Enemy advance fleet has been eliminated." "Casualties?" came the reply. "None, sir. Not even a scratch on our paint." There was silence on the channel for a moment. Then Admiral Taeho's voice came through, filled with satisfaction. "Well done, Captain. Come home. We have a war to finish." Admiral Kim Taeho stood in the command center watching the biggest fleet battle in human history unfold on his screens. The main Vraxian armada had arrived with over 200 massive warships, expecting to find the same weak humans they had fought 15 years ago. They were about to learn how wrong they were. "All human fleets report ready," said Commander Yoon So-ra from her position at the orbital defense platforms. "The enemy is moving into our trap perfectly." Taeho nodded. The Vraxians were using the same attack pattern they had used in the first war. They formed their ships into a giant wedge shape and charged straight at Earth, planning to smash through any defense with pure force. It had worked perfectly 15 years ago. Today, it would be their doom. "Execute Operation Thunderstorm," Taeho ordered. Across the solar system, human ships that had been hiding behind planets and asteroids suddenly appeared. The Vraxian fleet found themselves surrounded by over 300 human vessels, all moving with impossible coordination. Supreme Warlord Vexthar commanded the alien armada from his flagship, a ship the size of a small city. He had conquered 50 worlds with this fleet. No enemy had ever stood against him successfully. Humans detected on all sides, his tactical officer reported, fear creeping into his voice. "Sir, there are so many of them." "Impossible," Vexthar snarled. "Humans don't have that many ships, they can't build them fast enough." But the evidence was right there on his screens. Hundreds of human vessels surrounded his fleet, and they were moving like nothing he had ever seen. They flowed around each other like water, never colliding, never getting in each other's way. "Begin the attack," Vexthar commanded. "Show these primitives the power of the Vraxian Empire." His massive ships opened fire with weapons that could crack planets. Red beams of destruction lanced out toward the human fleet. But something was wrong. The humans seemed to know exactly where each shot would go before it was even fired. Captain Lee Dongwu commanded the mobile strike force from his ship, the Basan's Revenge. Around him, 50 human destroyers moved in perfect formation, their quantum-linked computers sharing information faster than thought itself. Enemy targeting systems analyzed, reported his weapons officer, Major Park Jun-seok. Quantum torpedoes loaded and ready. Fire at will, Lee commanded. The human ships launched their new weapons. The torpedoes didn't fly through space like normal missiles. Instead, they disappeared and reappeared directly inside the alien vessels, bypassing shields and armor completely. Bexthar watched in horror as explosions erupted throughout his fleet. But these weren't normal explosions. The human weapons were appearing inside his ships and detonating their fusion reactors from within. "How are they doing this?" he screamed at his officers. "How are their weapons getting through our shields?" Nobody had an answer. The quantum torpedoes used technology that the Vraxians couldn't understand. The weapons existed in multiple dimensions, at once allowing them to phase through any defense. Commander Yoon Sora activated the orbital defense platforms around Earth. These massive weapons had been built in secret over the past 10 years, hidden on the dark side of the moon and in asteroid fields throughout the system. "Planetary defense grid online," she reported, targeting enemy command ships. The defense platforms fired beams of pure energy that reached across millions of miles of space in seconds. The attacks struck the largest Vraxian vessels with pinpoint accuracy, punching through their thick armor like it was made of paper. The alien fleet began to break apart under the coordinated human assault. Ships that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries were being destroyed by weapons they had never seen before, tactics they couldn't counter. Major Park Jun-seok watched his targeting computer track another enemy vessel. "Sir, enemy ship Worldburner, in range. This is the ship that destroyed the Mars colony 15 years ago." Lee's face hardened. He remembered Mars. 3 million people had lived there. Now it was just a dead rock floating in space. "Give them our regards," he said coldly. 3. Quantum torpedoes phased directly into the Worldburner's engine room and exploded simultaneously. The massive vessel, which had burned dozens of worlds, broke in half and died in silent fire. Bexthar realized his fleet was doomed. These weren't the same humans from 15 years ago. These humans fought like machines, but with the fury of living beings. They made no mistakes, wasted no shots, showed no mercy. "All ships retreat," he commanded. "We have to warn the homeworlds." But there was nowhere to run. The human fleet had surrounded them completely, and their ships were faster than anything the Vraxians had. Every time an alien vessel tried to escape, it found itself facing multiple human ships that seemed to know exactly what it would do. Admiral Tae-ho watched the battle from Earth Command. His screens showed the systematic destruction of the mightiest fleet the galaxy had ever seen. Human weapons found their targets with perfect accuracy. Human ships moved with impossible coordination. Human tactics adapted to every alien counter-move in real time. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Park Yoon-ji, "enemy flagship is trying to surrender." Tae-ho's expression didn't change. "Tell them we don't accept surrenders from species that burn planets full of civilians. Continue the attack." The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Vraxian armada was nothing but debris floating in space. Not a single alien ship escaped. The human fleet had lost only 12 vessels, and even those were being repaired by their self-healing technology. Bexthar died cursing the day his people had first attacked humanity. His last thought was a warning that would never be delivered. The humans had become something the galaxy had never seen before. Something unstoppable. Admiral Kim Tae-ho stood before the massive assembly hall, looking out at representatives from every nation on Earth. Behind him, giant screens showed human fleets jumping to hyperspace, carrying their new weapons to distant star systems across the galaxy. The war was over. The Vraxian Empire was completely destroyed. Not a single alien ship remained to threaten humanity ever again. But for Tae-ho, this was just the beginning. "Fellow humans," he began, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. 6 months ago, the Vraxians came to finish what they started 15 years ago. They brought their biggest fleet, their most powerful weapons, their greatest warriors. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. They are all dead. Every last one of them. The assembly erupted in cheers, but Taeho raised his hand for silence. However, our mission does not end with victory. We have learned something terrible about our galaxy. Dr. Choi Minho stepped forward, carrying a datapad filled with information taken from captured Vraxian computers. The intelligence they had found was shocking. The Vraxians didn't just attack us, Minho explained. Over the past 200 years, they have enslaved 47 different species. Billions of intelligent beings are trapped under their rule, forced to work in mines, factories, and farms. On the screens behind them, images appeared showing alien worlds covered in massive industrial complexes. Creatures that looked like giant insects worked in chains, building weapons for their Vraxian masters. Other species, some that looked almost human, labored in underground mines, never seeing sunlight. These beings have been slaves for generations, Minho continued. They don't even remember what freedom looks like. The Vraxians told them that resistance was impossible, that no one in the galaxy was strong enough to challenge their empire. Colonel Han Ji-won stood up from her seat in the front row. She had seen the intelligence reports, studied the star maps they had recovered. What are you proposing, Admiral? Taeho's expression was firm, determined. We are going to free them, all of them. A murmur ran through the assembly. Some representatives looked excited, others worried. Taking on the responsibility of liberating an entire galaxy was not a small task. Sir, called out one delegate, we've just finished one war. Our people are tired. Our resources are stretched. How can we take on such a massive undertaking? Taeho smiled. Because we're not the same species that barely survived the first Vraxian attack. We have become something the galaxy has never seen before. We have the technology, the ships, and most importantly, the will to do what's right. Captain Kim Soo-jin appeared on the communication screen from her position in deep space. Behind her, the bridge of the Soul's Fury hummed with activity as her crew prepared for their next mission. Admiral, she reported, our scouts have reached the Kepler system. We've found a Vraxian slave world with over 50 million beings in chains. The local garrison has 12 ships, all using old technology. They won't even know what hit them. Taeho nodded. Proceed with liberation protocol, Captain. Free them, all. The screen showed Soo-jin's ship jumping to hyperspace, followed by 20 other human vessels. They would reach the slave world in 6 hours. By tomorrow, 50 million beings would taste freedom for the first time in their lives. Commander. Yunsora addressed the assembly from her position on Luna Command. We've identified 17 slave systems within 50 light-years of Earth. Our liberation fleets are already on their way. Each system will be freed within the next 2 weeks. The delegates listened in amazement as they realized the scale of what humanity was undertaking. They weren't just defending Earth anymore, they were actively reshaping the entire galaxy. But why? Asked another delegate. These beings aren't human. We don't owe them anything. Why risk our people for strangers? Taeho's expression grew serious. Because 15 years ago we were helpless. We watched our colonies burn and could do nothing to stop it. We know what it feels like to be powerless, to have no hope. He gestured toward the screens showing the enslaved worlds. These beings are living that nightmare every day. They wake up in chains, work until they collapse, and go to sleep knowing their children will face the same fate. We have the power to change that. How can we do anything else? Captain Lee Dongwoo's voice came through the communication system from the outer rim of the galaxy. Admiral, we've made contact with a group of escaped slaves hiding in the Vega Nebula. They're calling themselves the Freedom Coalition. They want to help us liberate their homeworlds. Excellent, Taeho replied. Provide them with weapons and supplies. Train them to fight alongside our forces. This is their galaxy too. The Assembly voted unanimously to approve the Galactic Liberation Protocol. Humanity would not stop with destroying the Vraxian Empire. They would actively seek out and eliminate every oppressive regime in the galaxy. Dr. Minho displayed a star map showing human expansion plans. Red dots marked slave worlds waiting for liberation. Blue lines showed the routes human fleets would take to reach them. Green zones indicated systems that would be freed and protected under human authority. Within 5 years, he announced, every intelligent species in this galaxy will be free. We will build a new order based on cooperation, not conquest. Trade, not slavery. Peace, not terror. As the assembly session ended, reports came in from across the galaxy. Human fleets were engaging Vraxian garrison forces on dozens of worlds. Every battle ended the same way. Complete human victory and the liberation of millions of enslaved beings. The age of Vraxian dominance was over. The age of human liberation had begun. And across the galaxy, beings who had never dared to hope were finally learning what freedom meant.